There are anthropologists, political philosophers, sociologists out there who have spent decades of their lives, I'm sure, to study this topic. I'm not one of them, so keep in mind that the purpose of this video is to raise questions rather than to answer them. I just want to open up a discussion about the subject, individualism in the United States of America. I ask a few seconds of patience to my subscribers because if you don't know me yet, you need some context. I am a 30-year-old Italian who has been living in the United States since, let's say, a couple of years, and specifically I'm living in New York City. I've traveled around the east coast of this country, but of course my perspective is gonna be inevitably influenced by my situation. Individualism is a very broad term, of course, but just as a general indication, let's say that individualism is a tendency to focus more on the individuals rather than the community. The society is seen more as a sum of its citizens rather than an organic entity. In this country, there is a very, very strong focus on the citizen as individual rather than as part of a society. And this has for sure a lot to do with the economical system that is in place. The United States is a very liberalist country. It strongly believes in free market and especially in free competition on the markets, where free in this case is meant as lacking the intervention of an institution, the government, or the state. And this economic concept has definitely favored the competitive individualism, where achievement and non-achievement depend on merit. Effort and ability are regarded as prerequisites for success. As a foreigner living here, individualism is one of the main traits of the American society, in my opinion, and also one of the traits that influence the most all the other aspects of the culture of the country. Individualism, seen as opposite to other forms of living together, has certainly big benefits. And I am definitely partially a fan of this concept. But after almost 2 years of observation of its declination in the United States, I ended up seeing the many dangers of it. And ultimately, it is my opinion that nowadays in America, individualism is way more damaging than the benefits that it brings. But let's step back 1 second and let me make a little subjective analysis of what I see around me. Now that you've heard that I'm very critical about this topic, I feel the need to mention that when I came here for the first time, I was very happy about the individualism. In fact, I've always been an individualist myself. I've always been one of those people who don't feel very comfortable in a group of people, and anti-conformist as well. I always wanted to do things differently than my peers, and I've always felt annoyed when the conformism of the society would make me feel bad about not doing the right thing in their opinion. So please keep this in mind, because my opinion doesn't come from preconcepts that I had already before coming here. The biggest positive side of the individualism is, with no doubt, the independence of the citizen. The fact that the society is focused on the rights of the single citizen means that they value the independence of opinion, of thinking, of choice of the single individual. And this is very important. It's absolutely not to be given for granted. We have very recent history examples of a total violation of that in the Western world. There are still nowadays numerous examples of violation of the independence of the individual. So if we talk about individualism at the political level, we talk about protecting the individual autonomy against obligations imposed by social institutions. And I may go even a little bit forward by defining the political individualism as the supremacy of individual rights and personal freedoms over and against any kind of authority. So just to take a random example, how COVID has been dealt politically here in this country was that people haven't been really forced to do a lockdown or to prevent the spread of the virus. They have been suggested to do so, but the citizens here have been always very much free since the beginning of the pandemic to stroll around wherever they wanted, with whoever they wanted, and do pretty much whatever they wanted. The limitations imposed by the government have been relatively very light. And if in other European countries, still nowadays it is pretty normal to be into lockdown, to be stuck in your own town or in your own region, here that way of thinking would be just impossible. If the American government had tried, even just tried or talked about enforcing a lockdown as has been enforced in Italy or in France, I think we would have all seen the majority of the American population uprising against the government. And just a little note regarding this first pro point of individualism. For me, living right now in New York City, the fact that this city is particularly so free-spirited and original is definitely due to the individualism of the culture here. I have never seen such a place with so much originality brought out from the people. And that is very valuable. A second pro that I would like to mention is the responsabilization of the individual. When you know that your government is not going to take care of yourself for you, you are going to take responsibilities for your success in the society. And this concept is very much ingrained into the minds of Americans. So much that here being successful in society is basically the whole goal of most of the people. And the problem then is to understand what successful means, because there is, in my opinion, a very uniform concept of success in the American society. And it is unfortunately very much related to financial achievement. But let's keep it on a positive note. If I compare an average American who is unemployed to an average Italian who is unemployed, the second one is gonna most likely sit at home waiting for a job to fall down from the sky, and in the meantime complaining about how things don't work in his country and how the government is a failure. The American, on the contrary, is gonna do this, we say in Italy, and go out there morning to evening to try to find a job. If he's not able to find it, build a new job from scratch for himself. This is a trait of the American society that I highly, highly admire. The responsabilization of the citizens is also seen in other contexts. This second example that I'm gonna make is the responsibility towards other people in the same society, other citizens like you. In fact, I've never seen such big gestures of volunteer job to help other people as here in the United States, and specifically in New York City. I don't know how it is in the rest of the country, to be honest, but I imagine that the situation is similar. And I've documented a couple of these examples here on my channel. I'm gonna leave the link down below, but you're also gonna find it here in the corner, of people who dedicate their free time, completely free time, just to help other people out, people who are in need, people who lost their job, who are homeless. There are really many, many examples. I only documented 2 so far, but I hope I will do more in the future, because these things happen all the time in this city at every corner. And that is not something that I see happening as often and as intensively in Italy. Okay, we've seen the positive sides of individualism. Now let's see the cons. Well, all the cons that I'm gonna name are really degenerations of the pure theoretical idea of individualism. What I see happening around me in this country is that because people are so independent from the state and from the society, they not only feel liberated by that, but they also feel the pressure of taking care of themselves and having to show their success to society. So I told you that I am personally an individual who is very individualist. I've never felt good being part of a group. I've always wanted to do things on my own. So I realized that for a person like me, individualism as in living in an individualistic society, can be very beneficial. But let's be realistic, not everyone is like me. There are as many people, and even more probably, that feel very good following a path that other people before them have followed. They feel very good at not having to think about what to do with their lives. They just follow what their parents have done. They focus on other things in life, you know? And for these people, probably living in a society that is more community-based is much more relaxing. In particular, in the American society, and I'm talking specifically about New York City right now, people are truly obsessed about success. And as I mentioned before, here success is meant in a very univocal way, and it means financial success. So very often I see that in this society, or almost always, let's be honest, success is defined by how much money you have and how much money you make with your job. And if you have a regular average job, which is totally fine, you are not seen as very successful. And because this individualistic mentality brings to that competitive kind of mentality as well that I was talking about earlier, the average person feels the need to go out and compete with its peers, the other citizens, to get a job that is better paid than his own neighbor. So keep this thing in mind. The other thing is a phenomenon that I see around me. I observe it. I've never researched studies or data about this, so let me know in the comments if you have any, if you have data that confirm my hypothesis, or if you have data that deny my hypothesis. But I see that people here tend to be more stressed and more mentally unhealthy than where I come from. And again, keep in mind that I live in New York City, probably in a random countryside somewhere else. The situation is different, but I've lived also in Rome, in Berlin, so big cities in Europe too. And if I compare them with the situation here, although the population is different in these cities, of course, but I have never seen so many mentally sick people as in New York City. Not only, but also the normal people that I'm acquainted with. They always have some sort of something that mentally is not okay. You can tell that they're not okay mentally. If you look at this phenomenon and you put it together with what I was talking about before, about competition, I mean, I cannot do anything else but seeing a very strong correlations between these two things. Also related to this is the fact that if you bring to the extremes this kind of thought, you end up supporting social Darwinism, which is scary. So a social Darwinist would say that life of humans in society is a struggle for existence ruled by survival of the fittest. Survival of the fittest. This is such a scary theory. I'm not even gonna talk about it in this video. I'm just gonna say that I find it absurd to compare how society works to how biology works. Biology is based on natural processes. Society is based on human interactions, which is a construction of the humankind. It's not something that you can find in nature. We build society and we decide how it works. So if you support this theory of social Darwinism, it means that you want to build a society that works on such a principle that only the fittest survives. The mental instability and mental illness that I see around me in this country, I'm convinced that it's not only caused by this pressure that society put on individuals because they are so independent that they also have to go out and take care of themselves all the time in every situation. But also, I'm sure that the lack of sense of community has a lot to do with this. I've mentioned this kind of American mentality in my video Italy versus United States, how communities form and what's the role of family in these two countries. You can find it here in the corner. There is very little sense of community here. Already, if you start from the tightest community nucleus, which is the family, already you can see how in the United States it's not as strong as it is in most of other countries in the world, I would say. But also if you go bigger and you observe other levels of the society, you will realize immediately that there is no sense of society here. And remember, I'm talking from New York City, so already in cities, even in my country, in cities there is less sense of community than in the countryside, but that doesn't invalidate what I'm talking about. In fact, let me take a simple example, a phenomenon that shows how little sense of community there is here, outside of cities. And I'm talking about how countryside towns are built. And when I talk about countryside, from an Italian perspective, countryside is anything that is outside of the city. This is something that I started to notice in my very first trip out of the cities, which I leave the vlog here because I was vlogging 3 years ago. People live in houses that are scattered around the whole place. So how towns work in Europe is that there is a center of the town where you have most of the houses, I would say 80% of the houses, and in the middle of this area there is usually a big square. You have all the shops, the commercial area, and then if you go out of this nucleus you will have wooded areas, fields, like places where there are not urbanized, where there are certain houses of families who wanted to live more by their own in the country. But these houses that are more isolated are not the rule. Whereas here in the United States, you can only see that basically. Towns here don't really have a center. You will notice immediately that so many houses are so isolated in the middle of the woods with no one around them. And that's why in the east coast of the country, despite having so much space, literally space in the land, you cannot find areas where you can just go and walk in nature without nobody bothering you, because usually it's always private property. Exactly because people, instead of living together in a community, they tend to just scatter around, and of course they know the other people in the town, but the sense of community is totally different. So while individualism was born as passion for liberty, passion for freedom, as sovereignty of the individual who liberates himself from all the dogmas, in nowadays the generation, the individualist society brings the strongest individuals up to the sky while pushing the weakest one down to the ground and below, causing ultimately that everyone is unhappy. I also think that the individualism that has developed so deeply in the United States and is spreading together with the American culture all over the world has quite a bit to do with the lack of passion and interest that newer generations have for common problems. Look at the French Revolution. Look at the political movements of the second half of the past century in Italy. Whenever the political passion was strong, the individual was never at the center of the focus. Individualism takes the individual as a central unit of analysis of the world. It strives to guarantee the individual the right to freedom and self-realization. These are very important concepts and important rights that we have to keep in our societies. But maybe today it's a good time to step back, and maybe we will realize all the damage that the extremization and degeneration of individualism has caused to us all. Panton crematon, metron anthropon einai. Man is measure of all things. Already the father of the Western culture, Plato, had warned us about the danger of this sophist way of thinking. So maybe it would be good for us to go back to the wisdom of the ancients and rethink our way of behaving in society. After all, as the other father of the Western culture, Aristotle, used to say, man is a political creature. We are meant to live in communities. We are meant to live in society. It is not in the human nature to live alone. I look forward to read and to answer to your comments underneath this video. Please click the like if you would like YouTube to show this video to other people. If you're interested to hear more about these kind of topics, I will drop down a list of links in the description below that you can go look at. I'm Mary J, and I'll see you in my next video.